Hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Hey, I'm Brett. Nice to meet everybody. So I'm very excited for you all to be here. I'm excited to speak at Artus. That's how it's pronounced, right? Artus Company?
Artus Co.
Artus Co. Okay, I'm excited to be here. I've loved the studio. I'm excited that I got to meet all of y'all individually and just share some of my knowledge that I have with the finance world. I feel like when it comes to, like I've been part of the artist community in a way, being a musician pretty much my entire life since I was middle school. The fact that I get to share this information with the people who are like part of my community is incredible to me. I'll tell you a little about my story here in a minute, but I feel like I'm going to say some things that the financial people usually won't say, because the financial people, I feel like, they look at things in a very black and white way of like, this is right, this is the only way, this is wrong, this is not the way. And I feel like as creative people, we don't see the world in the same way. We don't ever look at it as black and white. We look at it as, what works for me and what do I like? So that's the approach I take to finance. I'm going to give you some basic tips and some steps that you can take. However, just recognize that what works for one might not work for the other, but it's a general guideline. And me as a financial coach, I work with people in a way that I basically help them figure out how to make the best decisions for them in their life. Because like I said, what's right for me might not be right for you. Brett Roos, financial coach with RapidWise Financial Coaching. I'm excited to be here. The title of today's presentation is How to Establish Security with an Unpredictable Income. And I think as artists, we can all relate to having an unpredictable income. We know what it's like to have a month where it feels like you are on top of the world, you're like just balling out, you're like, heck yeah. And then the next month you're like, all I can afford is green beans at Dollar Tree, just to survive. So I know what it's like. I've had an unpredictable income since I was 19 years old. I can't ever think of a time that I knew what my income was gonna be. That I was like, I have like a safe, secure job that's gonna pay me the same amount every month. And I've never been in that mindset to know. I've worked various kinds of careers in my life, but none of them ever had that steady flow of just knowing what it's gonna be. So, with that, here's what you can expect. A little bit about me, my story. 5 steps that you can take to create security with an unpredictable income. Why these steps work. And then some next steps you can take if you'd like to. I like to have like kind of an open forum, so if you do have a question, literally raise your hand. I'm happy to answer it. Sometimes I feel like during a presentation, you get a question, if you're like me, and then ADD kicks in, and then at the end of it, you're like, what was I gonna ask? I don't remember. Anyways, just so y'all know, I'm animated like this all the time. A little bit about my story. I moved here from Oregon, actually, Southern Oregon. Moved here 2 years ago. I was not planning to move to Austin. Actually, I had a dead set plan that I was moving to Florida. I'd sold all my stuff, did everything. I just hopped in a car with my cat and started driving across the country. And I was like, I am going to either Orlando or Tampa or Jacksonville, one of those places. I want to be close to a beach, all that. So I was driving through, and I knew people along the way. I stopped in Austin for 2 days, met some friends. They would not let me leave. I'm not even kidding. I was here for over a month because they just kept being like, well, just come out this weekend. We're going to have some people over. Hey, we're going to get together for hiking. Let's do this. And I was like, why would I leave? So I've been here for 2 years. I met my awesome, fantastic partner, Marina, here. I've met the greatest community I've ever met in Austin. And I just absolutely, it's a place that feels like home to me. So I'm excited that I get to do my work here. Like I said, I've always been an artist. I've been a musician since I was in middle school. My dream when I was in 4th grade was to play in a heavy metal band. I used to air a guitar to Metallica songs in my room, all the time. That was my thing. And I remember when I got my first guitar was in 8th grade, and I literally could not put it down. So I've always wanted to be a musician, always wanted to tour with a heavy metal band. That doesn't make a lot of money unless you are like Metallica. Okay, so I did the second best thing. I got a job selling cars and RVs, okay, right? It was a popular thing in Southern Oregon. So I got a job in sales and found out that I was actually pretty decent at it. On the side of what, I'm a creative person. I'm also a dancer too. I dance bachata, salsa. That's just something I got into about 6 years ago. But the story of being a creative person working a normal job, and wanting to live that creative life. And so in my 20s, I was terrible with money. I made decent money selling cars, but I was terrible with it. In fact, by the age of 27, I had a car repoed. I had a bankruptcy. At one point in time, I was living on a couch, and it was a couch that was too small for me, so I had to lay sideways on it with my feet hanging off on this chase thing. Yeah, it was weird. I've had to borrow money just to eat. I know what it's like to be up here and down here. And then what happened was, at the age of 30, I decided that, I'm getting older. I want to do what I've always wanted to do with my life. I was working 70-hour weeks. And I found myself in the position again where I had over $51,000 in debt. I had no savings, and I just felt like I was completely powerless over my life. There's only two options that creative people have. We can either, one, step out and turn our hobby that we love into a career and make money with it, or we find a 9-to-5 career that allows us to do our hobby. And I had no way that I could find to turn my hobby into a career, at least that I saw a path to. So I found a 9-to-5 that I thought would help me, but it didn't. I found myself working 70 hours a week, and I had no opportunity to actually go hit the road and do what I wanted to do. So it was at that moment, it was actually December 2013 that I decided, because I actually asked my boss if I could go on tour. And he said, only if I found another job. And I was like, I'm not that risky of a person to just go jump out and go do that. So I was like, well, what do I got to do? So it was actually a funny story, because one of my good friends called me up right around that time. He's like, hey, he just started telling me about how he started paying off debt, and he started doing some simple things. And I was like, well, I want to do that. He was literally one step ahead of me. So for a year and a half, we were each other's accountability partners and called each other every couple days to tell him our things we were doing, crazy things we were doing to better our finances. In 18 months, I'd paid off all $51,000 in debt. I had a really good, sizable emergency fund that could cover me for a year. I started investing. I started just learning the basic stuff of finance. And then I remember the day that I turned my keys in, and my boss was like, well, what are you going to go do now? And I was like, whatever I want. And so I walked out of there, and I decided I was going to go on tour. So my band did its first tour then. And then I actually went and got a job at another lot, but when I walked into that lot, I had a lot more confidence in myself. I didn't feel like I needed to do something. So I negotiated 4 months off a year in order to do that. So that allowed me to go out and live my dream while still having a 9-to-5 that could cover everything that I wanted to do. So what I'm on a mission to do is I want to help people that have a fluctuating income do whatever it is that works for them, whether it be having that 9-to-5, but they have more financial security so that they can maybe not work as many hours so they can do the things that they like to do. Or if you turned your hobby into a career, then you can be more secure in what you're doing so that you're not stressed out all the time and just enjoy what it is you're doing. So with that, let's talk about what the unpredictable income struggle is, because I know the struggle extremely well. So the number one struggle is that you can't predict your income every month. Obviously, it's right in the name. Unpredictable income, okay? What this issue causes is that a lot of months we end up running out of cash during our low income months, okay? Because we're trying to constantly, we're having good months, we're paying things off, we're doing well, then we have some slow months. And every business has some kind of seasonality. So then we have some slow months. And then those slow months turn into us usually taking on more debt so that we can just survive, and then we have to catch up again. So we always feel like we're constantly playing catch up. And what this causes is that we have less time freedom because we have to work more to try to catch up to where we were at. And we're constantly in the cycle, and there's very little education that's catered to people like us to actually help us with our finances. All of the education out there, honestly, 99% of it that I've seen is catered towards somebody who knows exactly how much money they're going to make every month. Because you've probably heard it before. You probably heard, if you're budgeting, the B word, take your income minus your expenses, there you go. But if you don't know what your income is going to be, where do you start? Right? So we're going to talk about how to fix that. So what I wish I knew, I didn't know any of this stuff. I wish I knew the path that I could see, but now that's what I'm going to teach you. I wish I knew that there was a better way. So I'm going to talk to you about the 5 key steps that we're going to be going over. First one is mindset. Because, I know it's a commonly used word, okay? But personal finance is not just what to do. If what to do was everything, we would all be super rich, super fit, like super healthy, great friendships, great relationships. Like we could go, oh, I want to learn how to do this, and learn how to do it and be done. But there's another aspect that plays 80% role, and that's our behavior. That's all of our thoughts and the things that get in our way and all the blocks that we have. And a lot of times we'll see this where we want to go, and we start to go, and then there's some kind of roadblock. And it's usually something in our subconscious that tells us, nope, not that way. And then we just get stuck. So working on our mindset is key. That's 80% of it. Then the what to do. We're going to talk about an intentional spending plan, because I'm not into budgeting. I think budgeting sucks. We're going to talk about paying off debt. We're going to talk about saving, and we're going to talk about investing. So what's mindset? Mindset is how we think and feel about money. So we learned our financial habits somewhere. We aren't just born and like, boom, we know what to do with money. Or boom, we have bad habits, or we have good habits, you know? We learn them from somewhere. Where do we learn them from? This is the most important part. We learn them from who we grow up around, okay? Everybody falls into one of 4 different categories when they're growing up and being influenced about their finances. They either, in your household or amongst your peers or whatever, money was an issue and it was always talked about. So that is my household right there. I grew up in a house where we had no money and it was very well talked about. Has anybody have any phrases that they've heard that grew up in that group? That's a very common one, yeah. My dad used to look at me and he goes, oh yeah, we should get that. Do you have any money? I don't. You know, that was his thing. He would always say, you know, I grew up in a divorced family. He would always say, you know, go ask your mom. That's what it was. But it was always talked about, and I find with a lot of these people that grew up in this, we have an issue with making money and we're very verbal about it, okay? Oh, let's go back. Back. Okay. Second group, money was an issue and it was never talked about. It was like silenced, like you're not allowed to talk about the money issues, but you knew that there was an issue. Third group, money was not an issue. You grew up very well off. However, it was never talked about why you were so well off. Like nobody ever said anything like how they got there. Whether it was because they were ashamed, they felt guilty, or it was just because they felt like it wasn't their right to talk about it. And I find typically with these people, they typically struggle with a spending problem, like an overspending problem. So they spend too much because they just think, oh, it'll be fine. And that's kind of how they grew up with it. Or there's the fourth group, money was not an issue, you were well off, and it was always talked about. So we typically don't work a lot with these people because they kind of already have it figured out because somebody gave them good financial habits. But I would say over 90% of America grew up in one of these 3 categories. Okay? So what do? We got to change this. We got to change this way we think. And we start with putting everything on paper. But once you know this, you can ask yourself the question, how does what I grew up with in my household around money, how has it affected me today? What habits have I learned because of what my parents taught me or how they talked? And just knowing it and being real with yourself is like the first step. Because once you go, wow, like I didn't know that I overspend because we were so well off, then you can start being like, now it's like you've taken your sunglasses off and you're like, I can see different. So that's where it starts out. So how can we start to change all of this? Well, we change it through something called an intentional spending plan. How many of you hate the word budgeting? Right? Why does somebody hate the word budgeting? It's restrictive, right? It feels like your parents are telling you no, right? That's what it feels like to me. It always feels like my dad's telling me no, I'm not allowed to buy something. I'm not allowed to have fun, you know? So I believe in something called an intentional spending plan. Why do I believe in that? Because it's not restrictive, okay? It's more all about what you prioritize in your life. And it's about reaching your financial goals faster, okay? I believe, I'm gonna go way opposite end of what all of the financial gurus and coaches that talk to you about paying off debt and everything say. They say that you have to live on beans and rice, you're not allowed to have fun, you have to do all this financial stuff, you have to invest, you have to pay off your money. Life is not about having fun unless you have money. But then it's like, well, what do you do when you don't have money? Like, you just suffer, you know? And I don't feel like life should be that way. I feel like no matter what, I look at it this way. You should always be somewhat focused on the future, but mostly focused on the present. If you're too much focused on the future, you usually have a lot of anxiety. If you're focused too much on the present, you're just kind of living that YOLO life, and your future self is going to be like cranky, you know? And sometimes I look back and I go, man, I'm pretty cranky about what my past self did. Right? So an intentional spending plan is not restrictive. Prioritize what's important to you. That's going to be different for everybody, okay? And helps us reach our financial goals faster. There's 3 steps to creating an ISP, not an internet service provider, an intentional spending plan. You have to separate your fixed costs, your variable costs, and you have to automate it, okay? This is how you get to a point where you think about money less than 1 hour a month, okay? That's the goal. So what does this look like? I'm going to say this first before I get into all of this, okay? You've heard the income minus expenses, right? I want you to do the backwards way. I want you to figure out what all your expenses are, but I don't want you to figure out what you feel like you have to spend on something. Like, oh, I feel like I'm only allowed to spend this much. I want you to start out with what you want to spend on it, okay? Once you've done that, you've figured out what all your fixed costs are, okay? This stuff is pretty standard. You know what your housing costs are, your utilities, your food is typically your groceries, hence the grocery cart. Your transportation costs, you know, your fuel, you kind of know what you spend already on that. Your debt expenses, this is going to be like your monthly payments on stuff. And your insurances, health insurance and car insurance and all that. I wish I could say that this was, you kind of know what it's going to be, but it's crazy right now. Some of these are kind of crazy, but you kind of know, right? These are the expenses right here that you have to pay just to survive and live a normal life without having any kind of real fun. So the goal is to have this the lowest ratio to your income, okay? The higher ratio to your income this is, the more stressed out people feel because the more trapped they feel. If this is 90% of your income, you're probably not having much fun in life. You're probably just stressed, right? So separate all these. Figure out what all those are in like one category, one side of the page or one page. Then you want to figure out what your variable costs are. These are the things that I feel like make life worth living. All the fun stuff, okay? Your entertainment. Dining out experiences, that's a big one for me. My girlfriend and I are both foodies. We live in Austin. I mean, how can you not be a foodie in Austin? There's a lot of great food. I'm going to blow people away. My favorite restaurant in the world is literally Torchy's. I'm not even kidding. I found that out in 2019 when I played a show here, and my band, we ate at Torchy's one time. We ate there like 6 times in a row. And then I went back, and for 2 years, all I did was talk about it. And oddly enough, I met a girl who actually manages the Torchy's. It was weird. I didn't even know that until 3 months into dating her, too. I thought, yeah, it's a funny story. I'll tell you about it afterwards. But we joke about it all the time. She just told me she worked in the restaurant business, and that was it. And I thought she was a chef, but then I found out like she was a manager, and I was like, well, where do you manage? She's like, at Torchy's, and I was like, oh. Yep. So dining out, extracurricular activities, you know, you can decide what that is, and your short-term goals. This could be like your vacations, if you want to buy a new car, whatever it is. You have goals that you want to have. You want to send your kids to college, whatever it is. Short-term goals, okay? The goal in life, I feel like, is to have this be a higher percentage of your income, the fun stuff. If you're not spending enough on this stuff, you're probably feeling stressed out and trapped. If you spend a lot of this stuff, you probably feel like, I'm having a great time. Where the problem happens is when you spend a lot on this, but it's over your income. And that's where you end up falling into that place. So I want you to separate these from your fixed costs because they're 2 different things. You kind of know what the fixed costs are. These are going to change every single month. So mainly with your fixed costs, you're going to figure out, okay, what do I spend to just survive? Then with your variable costs, I want you to write down what you want to spend on those, okay? Because that's where you start. If you have your expenses first, then when you get your paycheck or you make your money for the month, you can look at it and go, okay, this is how much money I made. Where do I need to cut, or where can I expand? So the second tip to that, and I'm going to give you the gold here, okay? This is usually what people pay me for, but this is the gold, is instead of using your funds from that, like at the end of the month and looking back on your month, use your funds from the end of the month and look forward. So whatever you make in January is now your February spending, okay? And then whatever you make in February is your March spending. And then at the beginning of the month, you now know exactly what you need to cut or where you can expand. You look at your money and you go, you know what? I didn't make as much as the budget I wanted to live is, so where can I cut? I'm gonna have to cut some dining out, some entertainment, some of that. Got to suffer through this month, you know, but I'm still gonna have fun. If you make a lot more money, you can go, okay, where can I expand? Where can I expand? I'm gonna spend more money on dining out. I'm gonna spend more money on this stuff, right? So you're no longer playing catch up. You're just moving forward all the time. So tips to create an intentional spending plan, like a pro. Utilize a simple system. Don't get too complicated. The more complicated you get, the less likely you're going to want to use it. Don't be too restrictive. This is what I just talked about. A lot of people, what happens is they feel like they have to budget for this life that they have to live, like they're sentenced to it. Just create what you want to live. Factor in all your expenses. This means not just your monthly expenses, but think about what do you spend, like if you pay your car insurance every 6 months, if you pay your licenses or anything that you have or whatever every year, like break those down into a monthly expense and then use auto savings for all of that. Track your expenses regularly. You don't really have to do this with the fixed costs, a lot of those, but you have to do this with usually 2 or 3 things that are they fluctuate a lot. You know what they are in your life. Me, it's eating out. It's crazy. It goes up, it goes down. But track your expenses regularly and then automate everything using automatic payments and automatic savings so that you never have to think about it. You never miss a bill. You never go, what the heck do I do with this money? Okay? Let's move on. Good? Okay, awesome. Sweet. Okay, we'll talk about some debt payoff stuff, okay? Paying off debt. This is one that I'm pretty passionate about, but I'm going to go against the grain again, and I'm going to say that you don't have to be debt-free, okay? If you don't want to be debt-free, you don't have to be debt-free. It's up to you what lifestyle you want to live. Me, personally, I like being debt-free. I've been debt-free for 8 years now. I couldn't see myself going back because I feel like a sense of freedom with it. It just would be weird to me to make a payment again on something and be like, oh, when am I going to be able to pay this off? But that's me. But I have clients that go, I don't want to be debt-free. I'm fine with this. My interest rate on it's so low, that it doesn't make sense mathematically to pay off that debt. And that, like I said, as a financial coach, my goal is to help you make the best decisions for yourself that work for you. So if you want to pay off debt fast, here's how we do it. Okay? You've probably heard of the snowball. If you've heard of the debt snowball, that's what we're going to talk about. That's exactly what I did. You list all of your debts from the smallest to largest. Okay? Start by balance. That's what it is. Then what you do is you make all the minimum payments on all of your debts except the smallest one. You allocate any kind of money that you can extra to the smallest one. You continue to pay that one as much as you can. Once the smallest debt's paid off, then you move on to the next on the list. And then you continue to pay that off until that one's paid off. And then you continue until all your debts are paid off that you want to pay off. So one little trick that I did, I turned making money into a game because I was working 70-hour weeks. And some months I made less than I had to pay out. And those were hard months to pay debt without going backwards. So I took on a lot of side gigs, whether it was cleaning garages or selling all kinds of stuff out of my house or teaching guitar lessons or, all kinds of things I was doing. I've done this with clients with Uber or DoorDash or any kind of gig work. But what I've said is don't make paying off debt the main thing. Make it a game. Whatever extra money you make from your side gig or whatever you're doing to make extra money, use create a rule system. For me, it was 50% of that goes to debt. 50% of it just goes to fund money on whatever I want. And so I was like already working 70-hour weeks, but then I was like, well, I'm gonna work more because the more I work, the more fun I can have. It wasn't like a death sentence to pay off debt, just hoping that one day I get it paid off, but also like that constant like thought that like, what if I got hit by a car and this was my last day? I don't want to go, I just wish I had my debt paid off. I would sit there and I would remember all the good things. And so you want to make lasting memories. And so like I said, that goes against what every like financial guru is going to tell you, which is like beans and rice, suffer through it until your debt's paid off. Then you can live the life of your dreams. But by the time you get there, you're in such a sense of like financial scarcity in your mindset that you feel guilty spending money all the time. And I actually went through that. So make it a game. Even $25 extra a month like really makes a difference. Okay? When you start to put the numbers down, you'll start to see that like $25 extra a month can save you thousands of dollars of interest. And it's kind of like that, like the clickbait titles, articles, like, banks hate this man for this one rule, this one thing that he says, So $25 extra a month, do as much as you can, as much as you're able to, but just at least a little bit, So how do we keep from going backwards into debt? Through something called an emergency fund, okay? Now, what is an emergency fund? An emergency fund is a separate account. It's not a checking account. It's a separate savings account, okay? It's not even our normal savings account. For me, I believe that it should be in an account that earns you interest, because if it's going to sit there, it should be making money. So like a great place for it is a high yield savings account. So an emergency fund is used for emergencies. Because your friends want to go out and you don't have money, is that an emergency? I mean, you can decide, but probably not, okay? But this emergency funds really come in handy if you have like a loss of income. So like if you're having a really slow month or a couple slow months, or if maybe you have a job or business or whatever, and something happens and you lose that income, or a spouse loses their income. It happens if unexpected expenses come arise. Last time I got my alignment done on my car in Oregon was when I was in high school, when I was driving in the snow and I hit a curb. I've had my alignment done 4 times since I've moved to Austin. Because South Austin is like, I swear, all these like car, like the repair places, I think they're going around putting potholes in the ground. And I've accused him of it. I'm like, are you all doing this? I've seen you guys 4 times now, And it helps you avoid debt. So like if something happens, unexpected expense, a loss of income, or you decide that you need to take a risk and make a leap or something, you have that income to like really protect you. And this is all money that's saved up in a separate account, something you're not going to touch, something that's a little harder to access. You can't just swipe a card on it, okay? It takes a few days to come to your account. And, like I said, I recommend it in like a high yield savings account. Yeah. You can determine what an emergency is for your life. There. Any questions so far? You doing good? Okay, cool. Okay, so let's talk about saving versus investing, because this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They think that saving is investing or investing is saving, and they're 2 different things, okay? So, saving versus investing. Let's say that you're saving $2,500 a year, roughly $200 a month, for 40 years, okay? You're saving it in I've seen a shoebox. My dad is a safe, okay? And every time I go over there, he makes sure to tell me what the safe codes are and where to get them. And I'm like, just put it in a bank, put my name on it or something, I don't know. It could be in a big bank, a big bank savings account that's paying you what? 0.01, 0.02% interest, like nothing. So if you were saving $2,500 a year for 40 years at 0%, at the end of 40 years, you'd have $100,000, okay? In 40 years. Now, in 40 years, $100,000 is going to be worth a lot less than $100,000, right? I mean, $100,000 used to buy a house. And I don't even know what it buys now. I mean, honestly, it doesn't even buy a dang Chevy truck, which is what I sold, the Chevys. I can't even believe it. Blows me away. If you didn't know the average car payment now, is like $730 a month. Yeah. When I started selling cars, it was $250. When I left, it was $425. Wild. If you have the money and that's your priority, then go ahead, but couldn't see myself doing that. But, so yeah, it doesn't buy a Chevy truck anymore. So that's if you're just saving the money. Now, if you're investing it, let's say you're investing it in a low rate of return fund of some kind, okay? At 3% return, okay? If you're investing the same $2,500 a year for 40 years at 3%, in that same 10-year or 40 years, you would have $188,503. So it's almost twice as much, okay? Just for example, high yield savings accounts right now are paying between 4 to 5%, okay? Now those do fluctuate. CDs are paying like 5% plus. So like there's different options that you can go with for short-term interest that's definitely higher than 3%. But like 3% is pretty much like low end for any mutual fund or index fund. And if you are looking for, you know, good funds and everything, definitely talk to a financial planner or financial advisor. I know Eric said he has one scheduled to come talk. Yeah. Investing example 2. Okay? Pow. If you're investing $2,500 a year for 40 years and your rate of return is 10%, okay? Just for example, the S&P 500, the average rate of return over the last 70-ish years is 10.11%. Okay, so that's where that number comes from. Now, none of these are guaranteed, okay? But that's just the S&P 500 over the last, since they started tracking it in like 1957. At the end of those 40 years, you'd have $1.1 million, okay? That's over $1 million difference than if you were just to save it, okay? Now, saving is important because you're saving for your emergencies. You're saving for that loss of income. But if all you're doing is saving, then you're really missing out on a lot of opportunity. Your future self is going to be cranky. You're like, how do I afford to live? You know? So, the scariest topic for everybody, am I going to be able to retire? And how do I retire? And how much do I need? Right? So here's how you can figure out how to retire, and because retirement is not an age. A lot of people have this misconception that it's an age, and I believe that's brought on by like the previous generations that were really like, you know, based off of they had pensions, they had, you know, they were working like jobs for like 40 years. The same job for 40 years. I mean, like my grandparents worked the same job for like 30, 40 years. They had pensions, they had Social Security, they have different retirement plans, they have all this kind of stuff. But the now generations don't really have access to a lot of that. Plus, I think that there's a difference in the way we think, that we've decided that it's not about working for somebody else at a steady job for 40 years. It's about what do I want to do with my life? And that's why we all do what we do. So we take the leap. But then how are we supposed to retire? Okay? So here's how you figure out how much you need for retirement. Take your annual income you want, divide it by 4%. So if you want to make $100,000 a year in retirement, okay, you take $100,000 divided by 4%, that's how much you need. Okay? It's $2.5 million. You can change this depending on what you feel like you're going to need. So if you feel like you're not going to need that much, you don't need that much. And I use 4% because if your average rate of return is somewhere between 6 to 10% on your retirement funds, then that means that after you take your distributions, your 4% a year, and you pay your taxes on it, you're theoretically never going to run out of money. And when you hit the number that you want to hit, that's when you can retire. Now, retirement doesn't have to mean you're going to just sit on a couch and watch TV or go sit on a beach somewhere and do nothing. Like, that sounds really cool, but once you go do it, what?
So it absolutely does.
It sounds really cool, but go do it for 2 weeks. And then you're going to go, I am extremely bored. If all you're doing is just coming out of your hotel and then you go sit on a beach and then you're like, this is what I'm doing, and then you go back. Sounds great, but we're creative people. We're probably going to be working the rest of our life because we want to. Like, that's my goal in life. Retirement doesn't have to be just the money you save, but retirement can also be a business that you create that you want to do in retirement. So I love that I get to do this. This is something I would do for free. So, like, why I'm here. So that's how you figure out the number. What does that look like on a monthly basis? Pow. If you are 25 years old and your goal is by 65, okay, and we're assuming an average rate of return of 10%, at 25 years old, you would need to invest $395 a month. If you're 35, you would need to invest $1,100 a month to hit that same number. 45, $3,300 a month. 55, $12,000 a month, okay? Now, all of these are possible, but as you get older, the numbers get higher, and the question is it probable for what you do? It's all your own story, okay? But the moral of this story is that every 10 years you wait to start, it costs you 3 times as much, okay? So start as soon as possible, okay? And what that could mean, even if you're in the debt payoff process, even if you're in the building emergency fund process and everything, even if it's just literally just like I have $25 a month that I can invest into, you know, like I said, talk to a financial planner, or you can just learn some basic investing like exchange traded funds or mutual funds or some index funds. Investing in something that you believe in is really where it comes down to. A lot of people that do single stocks, I never give financial advice, tell you what to invest in. But the idea is invest in something you think people are going to use that you actually use yourself because you believe in it, you know. But even that $25 a month can build up, okay? So why do these 5 steps work? I want you to think of like a house, okay? Or a building, what we're in, okay? The foundation is the mindset. That's like 80% of it. If you do those other 4 things, but you have like a very weak mindset around your money, your house is likely to just sink into the ground, okay? And that's why a lot of people, when they start this financial stuff, they do a lot of different programs, or they listen to podcasts or whatever, and there's a lot of noise out there. Like a lot of people telling you, like, you got to invest in crypto, you got to invest in real estate. Index funds are the only way. No, mutual funds are the only way. No, you have to do this. Like, they're all telling you these different things. And they are all 100% certain that that is the only way you can make money. And so it's so hard to figure out what it is. So when you find something that works for you, you start to put these steps into play. If you don't have the good mindset around it of like, okay, I'm going to really like stay disciplined, I'm going to like keep myself accountable, and I'm going to just proceed forward every day and just give myself breaks when I need it, then you're likely to just fall apart, okay? The rest of it is just your 4 walls, okay? So with that, pow, questions, comments, critiques?
So with the little chart where you have the 3 different investment types,
Yeah.
what was the name of the one that was a lot better than the other 2?
Oh, okay, so what I was saying, So what I was saying is that so this is based off an example of the S&P 500. Okay. S and ampersand sign P 500, which there's a lot of different index funds and ETFs that just track the S&P 500. Real simple way to, there's 2 websites you can go to. ETF.com will show you some basic like ETFs, exchange traded funds, and you can compare them. Also, I want to say bankrate.com. It's going to show you a lot of stuff too. There's a lot of information out there. But talking to a financial advisor or planner about like specific strategy, if you want somebody that's professional to work with you, is a really good way to go also.
So is that like if I have an IRA, would that be?
Yeah, so an IRA is basically an account, a retirement account that has different funds within inside of it. Yep.
And the S&P 500 is one of?
Could be. Yeah, it's just one kind of fund. The S&P 500 is the top 500 companies in the country, and it's tracking their stocks. And so what a fund does is it basically just buys little pieces of each stock, and then when you buy one share of that fund, you own little portions of each stock. So typically funds don't go up and down like this. They're kind of more along the lines of like doing this thing. Because like it's kind of like, you know, if the FANG companies like Facebook, Apple, you know, Netflix, Google, if those companies, if FANG is having a really hard time like they did last year, like, and they're going down, there's other companies that are going up. You know, there's Coca-Cola, there's, you know, Pepsi company, there's, you know, companies that are non-tech that are like going up. And so it kind of evens it out.
Other
Yeah.
A couple questions.
Yeah.
So in the 5 steps, the 5 tools that you had, do you suggest doing them simultaneously, or is any one more important than the other? So basically, I was thinking, when do I know it's time to, like, when should I be thinking about, okay, now it's time to invest? Or when should I be thinking, now it's time to figure out, like how much money I should be putting in? You know what I mean? Is that a simple question?
That's actually a great question. Yeah. So it comes down to a couple things. Number one, how much extra money do you have when you create your spending plan? Like if you have $2, you can't do a lot with that. So you're not going to be investing and saving and paying off debt extra with that. Now, if you have $500, then it's a different story. And realistically, it comes down to what you would like to do. If you go, you know what? I would like to do all 3 of these at the same time. I'd like to start paying off my debt. You recognize maybe it's going to take a little longer to pay off your debt because you want to start saving for that emergency fund, because maybe you feel like you're, like you don't want to take the risk of not having that. And you also want to, start investing because you want to see that growth at the same time, then that's a great idea. Now, if you are more focused, this is what I did. I was more focused. I was like, I got to have an emergency fund first because I'm not a risk taker. Then I'm going to pay off my debt. And I did that. And then after I paid off my debt, then I started investing. And I did not get into a 401k or anything. And I lost out on growth of my money in that 401k. Okay? But for me, that was what was right. Okay? Because I decided that I wanted to be debt-free and be debt-free real fast. Because I had a plan in mind. I had a vision for what I wanted my life to look like. And if I had been investing some of that money, it would have slowed down that plan. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Awesome, yeah. I give you permission to do all 3 at once, if you want. Or permission to do 1 or 2.
Right.
Yep.
Would you recommend to start investing before saving?
That really depends on you also. I feel like saving isn't, well, there's 2 different things. Investing is important because it helps your money grow. Saving is important because it helps protect you today. So the hard part with investing, if you're just investing and you don't have any kind of saving, is that investments go up, but they also go down. And we can't predict what's going to happen. And so what if you're in an emergency situation and you're like, oh my gosh, my car needs a new transmission, and it's like, that's the only way I can get to work and I can do the stuff. But all your money's tied up in investments, but it's currently in what they call a bear market, and your investments are down from what you put in it, but you're forced to pull them out to pay for that. You've now cost yourself more money by doing that.
What banks do you use?
Well, banks,
Just curious, so I have a bank with a credit union, but here, this case, we use Chase. And so I'm kind of seeing differences, but I was just curious, what do you have a preferred bank that you like, or?
Yeah, so this is not a recommendation for a bank, okay? Make your own decisions on what bank you like. Do your own research, okay? I have RBFCU. Yeah, I used to have Wells Fargo. I still have a Wells Fargo credit card, but honestly, I just didn't like some of the stuff that I saw with having the account and everything, and I'm getting away from the Wells Fargo credit card. So I went to RBFCU because I wanted to bank with where I'm at locally. I've always been afraid of credit unions because I travel around so much. But then I found that RBFCU had some options that really helped me when I'm traveling that were okay, especially because a lot of it's now they do that electronic deposit with checks. And when I had Wells Fargo, they didn't really have that option for a long time. So like when I'm touring with the country and we play a show, everything's under my name and the venue pays us with a check. Like I need to be able to feed the guys and pay for the gas and everything. Like, and so unless I want to run my own debit card and all that, like I needed a way to deposit it. And so we would just go find a bank and we would just cash it, so we could do that. But RBFCU is who I bank with. I also have I have a high yield savings account through Ally Financial. I like them because your high yield savings account right now earns 4.25%. But also they give you this option that's really cool where you can split your account into 10 separate accounts. So you can have like this is my emergency fund account, this is my vacation fund, this is my new car fund, this is my whatever fund, you know? And so you can just like set it up to automatically transfer to all those different like buckets, they call it.
Profit first.
Yeah, so it's like a cool thing that you can do so that you can keep everything separated so it's not like you can see your growth in each one. Like, oh, I want to save up $3,000 for a vacation that we really want to go on. And you can see that, and it's not intermingled with your emergency fund. Yeah, but bankrate.com is a great place to do research.
So on the high yield savings account, is there a limit to like how often you can withdraw?
Every bank is different.
Okay.
Yep, and you're going to have to look at the rules of those banks. Usually with high yield savings accounts, there is a limit. I want to say it's typically 6 to 10 times a month.
Okay.
They don't want you using it like a debit card. In fact, I don't even think that they give you a card. And it usually takes 3 business days or even more to get your money when you transfer it. So that's why I said if you need the money today, you're not going to get it from that. This is the money you want to put in there that you don't need today.
What was that website?
Bankrate, bankrate.com.
I have another question
Yeah.
about the IRA stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple of different IRAs from different jobs that I've had. Would it be beneficial for me to combine them into one? Would that be a good idea?
That's a financial planner question.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Financial planners,
Cost extra to find that out.
it could. Yep. Yeah. It's a great question for a financial advisor or a planner. Yeah, the difference between a financial planner and a financial coach, we both do the things that the other one doesn't want to do. And that's the way, yeah. So like I joke about this with a financial planner that I know, that I'm friends with. So you can look at it like it's on a timeline, okay? Your financial coach works with you with what you have in your checking account today and helps you build the habits that you need to build in order to achieve the goals you want to achieve in the future. Okay, we help you with all of the stuff we think is fun. The creating the spending plan, the debt payoff plans, the watching you win, holding you accountable, you know, weekly calls or monthly calls or whatever, how we set it up. Like, that's the stuff I absolutely love, okay? Financial planner that I talk to does not like that stuff. He's like, I can do it, but I don't like it. What he likes to do is talk to you about investment strategies, which funds are doing the best. He likes to manage your money. He likes to see it grow and then like move it around if it needs to, if the market's changing. You can look at the financial planner as somebody who works with your money for way in the future. And they're the one that's helping you get set up for the future. Awesome. So with that, if you feel like this is you, this is my first time doing this with this. If you feel like this is you, this is just how I work with people. If you feel like you have no time to manage your finances or you're really struggling with where to start on your money, or if you feel like you just have zero financial education and you're like, I am totally lost on this, I feel like the dumbest person in the room and I don't want to be anymore. If you feel like no matter how hard you work and how much money you make, you never have enough, you feel like you're always stuck paying debt, then that's where a financial coach comes in. So that's how we help people. Ways that RapidWise helps our clients. We help people build good financial habits. We help you with your intentional spending plans. We help you create your retirement goals and your kind of plan for how much money you should be investing into that. We help you with charging what you're worth. As creative people, I will tell you this from personal experience, because I teach dance classes every Sunday night. And along with that and guitar stuff, sometimes I teach guitar lessons, sometimes I teach private dance lessons. As creative people, we have the best taste, okay? We have the best taste. However, the downside of having such good taste is that we often compare what we do to our good taste, okay? And then we feel like, okay, that person, like, okay, so like let's just use artwork as an example. Like it's all interpretive to who's looking at it. But if you look at your favorite artist and you go like, I'm not as good as them, and they're charging this much, I can never charge that much. That's what a lot of creative people go through. If this person is charging that much, I can't charge that much because they're so much better than me. But one thing we don't realize as creative people is that people who are not as far along in the journey as us cannot see the difference between the two. In fact, when they look at somebody who we idolize, it often looks too blurry to them. They can't understand it. So to somebody who's a beginner in something, they look at what we're doing. You know, if we're closer to where they are, and I'm not saying you're closer to you, but you're probably the people that I would idolize, okay? Then they look at it as, I understand what it is you're doing. I can see the path there. I just need help getting there. And so, like when I show my girlfriend dance videos, like when I show her the really high level people, she's like, they just look like they're wiggling around together. That's what she told me. She goes, I don't understand any of it. They just look like they're wiggling around. And when I show her more of the basic stuff that I'm doing, she's like, oh, that's really cool. That looks really cool. You know, it's why somebody, you know, will hear like a traditional 4-chord band, you know, and they'll be like, dude, they are so good. But then they'll hear like complex jazz music, and they'll be like, this sounds like noise, you know? So I help you with charging what you're worth to make sure that your earned hourly ratio is where it should be. We talk about like creating a debt payoff plan for you. We talk about automation, we do accountability, and then there's some more that we do also. So with that, I keep going the wrong way. The QR code right here is ways to connect up with me. If you would like to schedule a free call with me, then I offer that. So we can just talk about your personal situation. You can book it right from the QR code, and it's based on your calendar. We can schedule a time to just chat for about 25, 30 minutes, just so I can understand what your situation is and see if I'm the right person to help, and if I'm not, I will definitely send you to the right person. And if I am, then I'll tell you what it looks like to work with me. And I have options available for everybody at every point in their journey. So with that, I appreciate it very much. Thank you guys for coming out. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I